This is April Holloway with Holloway Legal. I'm an attorney located in the Washington, D.C. area with 12 years of experience. So today I'm going to give you 5 tips to help you prepare for your asylum interview. Tip number 1, review the requirements for asylum before your interview. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that if they just go into the interview and say, my country is in a political crisis, or my country is in an economic crisis, that that's sufficient to establish a right to asylum. But it's not. There are 5 requirements in order to be granted asylum in the United States. I prepared a legal guide so you could read about each requirement. However, the basic premise is this: you have to show what harm is particular to you and that the government of your country is unwilling to stop that harm. So even if you come from a country that has severe economic issues or is having severe political issues, it doesn't necessarily mean that you as an individual are being harmed. And those are the connections that need to be made. In some cases, this may be a little bit difficult to make that connection. That's the reason why you want to work with an attorney in order to determine the proper phrasing and posture of your case. In the description, you'll find a link to a guide that I prepared if you want to read about the 5 specific requirements in order to be granted asylum. And you should do that before you go into your interview. Tip number 2. If your first language is not English, or if you simply express yourself better in another language, please use an interpreter. Unfortunately, some people think that speaking English will give them more opportunities for their asylum to be granted, or give them more credibility in the interview. And that is simply not true. You want to go forward with whatever method is best for you to be able to express your fears and details and understanding. If you decide to proceed to the interview in English, and during the interview you realize you're having some trouble, maybe even your nerves get the best of you where you're unable to speak, think, translate clearly, do not be afraid to pause the interview and tell the officer, I would like to use an interpreter at this point. I feel that we've gotten into an area that I'm having trouble expressing myself in. Please call an interpreter. They will either call one on the phone or they'll reschedule your interview to another day. Tip number 3. Please review your asylum application prior to the interview. Actually get a copy of your application or pull it up online if you found it online and read every single sentence. The asylum officer is making an assessment over whether or not you're credible, in other words, truthful, during the interview. And part of that assessment is how consistent your story is compared to when you submitted it in writing and any additional evidence that was submitted along with your application. So any witness statements or articles submitted along with your application should also be reviewed. In particular, you want to review the dates of significant events and the locations where those events occurred. Here's a small note on location. Sometimes a particular thing may be very clear to you because you understand your country and you understand how things are set up. But that same thing may not be clear to your officer, and so you will need to explain it. For example, in many countries, people have small shops or they sell things out of their homes. When you tell an American officer that you worked in a store, the general assumption is that that store is in a different location from your home. So if that's not the case, if you're one of the people who worked in a store that was part of your home or part of your garage, and that's a part of your story, then you have to explain that to the officer because they will not assume that that's true. And tip number 4, slow down. There is a great tendency to go into your interview and you just want to rush and hurry and tell the asylum officer, I'm afraid to go back to my country. Please don't send me back there. I was harmed. Please don't send me back. But the officer needs to be able to listen to your entire story. They want to know about your background and reviewing the application, birth date, your parents' information, your sibling information. It's going to be 30 to 45 minutes before you even get into the reasons why you came to the United States. So when you go into your interview, you want to take a deep breath, sit down, and slow down. When it comes to the part of the interview where you are talking about your fears to return to your home country, you want to start at the very beginning. When did the problems actually begin to occur? When did the threats begin to occur? The tendency is to say, the car hit me in the street and they got out and started shooting at me. But the asylum officer needs to understand the course of events as they occurred. So I began volunteering with a political organization in 1983. In 1984 was the first time that I received a threat. And the officer will ask, where were you when you received that threat? What time of year was it? Or what month, if you remember. So it's going to go very slowly, and you need to be able to be prepared on telling that story. Generally, they're going to focus on the first time that you were harmed, the worst time that you were harmed, and the last time that you were harmed, because they want to know what was the course of events that led to you deciding to flee your country, and how was that last threat more sufficient or more dangerous than any other threats that you'd received while you continued living in the country. And tip number 5, do not embellish. And beware of admitting to things that will reflect negatively on your application. For example, imagine you arrived in the United States on a student visa, and then you immediately applied for asylum. There might be a tendency to say things were just so bad in my country that I applied for a student visa so that I could come here and apply for asylum. And your intent is to convey to the asylum officer how bad things are. But unfortunately, you're admitting to visa fraud if you do that. So if you truly arrived in the United States with the intention to study, and you were unable to go to school because the situation worsened, because you couldn't afford it, whatever happened, then you want to say that and then say you applied for asylum, instead of being unnecessarily emphatic and trying to say that you just did the application for a student visa so that you would be able to come to the US and apply for asylum. And finally, as a bonus tip, what to do while you're waiting for your asylum interview. As you know, some people can be waiting 4 or 5 years before they actually receive an asylum interview. During that time, you can be working to continue gathering evidence to support your asylum case. Evidence to support your asylum case can be in the form of articles, letters from people who know about the situation, medical reports, police reports. If you're going to get letters from people who know about your situation, the letter needs to pertain to you and why it's not safe for you to live in the country. And the letters from your different family members or friends should not all be the same. They should be written in their own words, expressing why you would be harmed if you return to that country. Thank you for listening to these 5 tips that will help you in your asylum interview. Remember to subscribe to Holloway Legal for more. If you have any immigration questions that you would like to be answered on the YouTube channel, please feel free to write those questions below in the comments. Otherwise, if you'd like to schedule a free consultation, you may contact us at the information below in the description. Have a great day.